Welcome to Point Blank, brought to you by Fitz Roofing. I'm Brandon Strange, joined by ESPN Houston's Joel Blank of the Press Box. Joel, welcome in. It's been a disappointing season so far for the Astros, but one of the benefits of all the injuries is seeing a lot more of these younger guys that we wouldn't otherwise. You and AJ did a video last week in which you highlighted some of the bright spots from the young pitchers. And on the other side, we're seeing a lot more from Kyle Tucker. After a slow start, he seems to be coming into his own. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing a guy that's finally giving you a little glimmer of hope on the future of this franchise for a guy that was supposed to be the franchise going forward. Here's a guy that's been full of nothing but disappointment at the major league level, though he's absolutely been raking the cover off the ball in the minor leagues. But finally, we're seeing the glimpse of hope that everybody had basically put this star on Kyle Tucker's entire career as he got up to the big leagues. He just hasn't gotten there yet. Now, you could say basically in the short period of time that we've seen this season, he's capitalized on hitting bad teams and bad pitching. But it doesn't matter because everybody plays the same schedule. As long as you take advantage of the opportunities, and a guy that's now leading the team in almost every offensive statistical category, including the major ones of home runs and RBIs, tip your cap and say, hey, maybe it's taken a little while longer than otherwise for other players, but it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get there, and let's just hope it continues and he's on an upward spiral to being somewhat of a franchise player for this team.
The average isn't quite there yet, but that comes with reps, right?
Absolutely. And, it's getting familiar with the league and the pitching staff and even the lineup around him. And based on who's hitting in front of him and behind him, how many good pitches he's going to see. And, he was really searching for a while. He's a guy that hits barehanded, but went to batting gloves because he knew how badly he was struggling and how much he was being counted on by the Astros. But when he just relaxed and got back to being who he is, which is not an overly powerful power hitter, but a guy that hits for average and extra bases and can be a cornerstone in the outfield like the Astros hope he can be. With Josh Reddick's contract expiring, right field is all Kyle Tucker for the foreseeable future. So he just realizes he's got to grow into that position by the start of next season. He's on a little bit of a crash course because of injuries that he's getting even more playing time this year. But thankfully, in this last couple of weeks, he's capitalized on the opportunity, and he's been a much-needed force in the middle of that lineup for the Astros.
Now, he looks good right now, but I want to ask you about his upside. But before we do that, I want to give us a word from our sponsors at Fitz Roofing.
Yeah, basically, guys, look, Fitz Roofing has been loyal to us, loyal to the people of Houston, Texas. And with all these different hurricanes and storms coming into the Gulf and possibly messing with your roof, there's only one place to call. It's Fitz Roofing. It's 832-521-3001. It's a free, no-obligation inspection. They come to you, they tell you what they can do, and they go back on their merry way. You want them to come back, you just call them back, and they're going to do fantastic work with the best products and the best warranties and the best ratings in the business. Fitz Roofing, making a difference one home at a time.
We've seen a small sample size of the season right now, and so far what we're seeing over the past several weeks, really good stuff, really starting to round into that player we've expected him to be. But what's his real upside? What do you think his ceiling really is? What player would you compare him to, not named Ted Williams?
Boy, it's a tough one, Brandon, because up until this little hot streak, I was the one saying, hey, pull the plug, and if he does get hot, trade while the value is high, and it may never be that high again, because I don't think he ever accomplishes and achieves those lofty goals and expectations that were set on him when the Astros took him in the first round. But now there's a glimmer of hope, and now he's playing better. I don't want to put too much pressure on the kid, but I definitely don't think he's Ted Williams, and I don't think he's the cornerstone franchise player like a Mike Trout, like a guy you center your entire lineup around. I think he can be a better Josh Reddick, and with a better average and maybe a little bit more pop in his bat. I know that's not going to make everybody excited as an Astros fan, but in looking for comparisons of guys that are above average that maybe can give you a little bit more, Nick Markakis comes to mind, a guy that's going to be a steady guy, occasional all-star, good defensive outfielder in the outfield, doesn't not set the world on fire, but has sneaky ways of getting statistics and being a guy that contributes to your lineup. I don't know that he's going to be on the high side anywhere close to what people thought. I don't think he's going to be on the downside as big of a bust as people considered, but I think somewhere in the middle for both Astros fans, and the team going forward would be just fine.
if you could consider this down season for the Astros a little bit of an upside, because maybe there's not as much pressure on him to perform in big situations. Maybe he's getting some necessary at-bats against big leaguers that's, where he can just really get comfortable, dial in, focus on his mechanics. Could this really be helpful for him going forward?
I think it really can. I think you bring up a good point, simply because of the fact that the Astros aren't one of the top 2 favored teams in the league like the Dodgers and or the Yankees, and of course the Cubs are in the mix, and he's not going to be on the biggest stage with expectations of winning another World Series for the city of Houston. If they get there and or they win it, it would be just the absolute coup de grace of an overachieving type season based on all the injuries, the shortened season, the pandemic, and all the variables. So instead, what does he get to do? He gets to step into the middle of a lineup and be a big, every time, every day player for Dusty Baker and just relax, as I said. And if he does his thing and shows he can be a reliable outfielder and he can hit for some pop, but with some average, and to get some key hits at key times, it can only help him going forward, because whether Springer's here next year or not, Reddick won't be, and there will be an opportunity for him in the outfield to be an everyday, steady player in the major leagues for the Houston Astros.